to the show.
What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of Off the Mats Podcast. It's me, it's Dante. It was me last week too, and it's going to be me next week as well. So, my guest this week is Miss Tracy Frances, and she does Brazilian Jiu Jitsu. So, I want to talk to her about Jiu Jitsu. So, Tracy, welcome to the show. How are you?
I'm doing so well. How are you?
I'm doing okay. Not I can't complain, but it's not about me. It's about you. So I want to, I guess, what really prompted me to ask you onto the show is you had put up a post, honestly, maybe 2 or 3 weeks ago on Instagram, and just seeing you on Instagram in general, doing jujitsu, doing the pole fitness and everything. It's like, wow, this is a physically able-bodied fit person. And then you had put up a post about having Lyme disease, and about a year ago you're using a cane to walk, and I was like, wow, oh, like holy shit, like that's a hell of a journey, within a year. So if you don't mind, can I ask you about that experience, just coming from there and then getting into jiu-jitsu and where we are now.
Yeah, it's been absolutely a wild ride for the past year or so of my life. So, I just started jujitsu halfway through January of this year. Um, but rewinding back to when all of this stuff started to go down, last year in May, I finally received a diagnosis for an illness that I had been struggling with for 15 years. And I had gone to so many different doctors because there was just so much wrong. Everything was not working. And then it just kept getting worse and worse and worse and worse. But I never got an answer. Conventional medicine failed me miserably, and everything that could have gone wrong really did from the get-go. So I was bit by a tick in March of 2007. And I was horseback riding in South Carolina when it happened. I remember the exact day that it happened. It was March 10th. I'll never forget it because I now know that that was what would change my life for in these crazy ways. So I started to get sick almost pretty much immediately. I About 2 or 3 weeks into it, I had these weird upper back pains, and I was like, it's just because I'm getting old. Here's 21-year-old me, like, or 20-year-old me, and I'm like, I'm just getting old. I'm not in high school. I'm not dancing anymore. I'm not as active, and this is just something that happens. So I went to the doctor, and they gave me a cortisone injection, which was the start of everything going horribly wrong. They didn't know what they were doing. They didn't really look into it. They didn't ask me what was causing any of this stuff. I was one of the 30% of people that don't get the bullseye rash. I didn't even know to look for that, honestly. I had grown up in going to visit northern Wisconsin. Like, you hear about ticks, you hear about Lyme disease, but you don't really know what it can do. So I got bit by a tick. I pulled the tick off of me. I just threw it away, flushed it down the toilet, whatever. And that was that. I was like, oh, I got an insect bite, no big deal, right? Well, then these symptoms started. I went and got the cortisone injection, and that makes your immune system plummet. And so basically the Lyme bacteria took over absolutely everything at that point. And from then it was just random aches and pains. Things would be hurting. Things weren't functioning properly. And over the course of the next 15 years, it went from just minor aches and pains to literally not being able to walk, not being able to talk, not being able to drive, not being able to think, couldn't do hardly anything. It got to the point where I couldn't physically get myself up out of bed in the morning to go use the bathroom. I needed assistance to do that. So I was struggling with with eating. I say towards the end because it literally, my life made a 180-degree turn. It's been so insane, but towards the end there, so at the end of April of last year is when I stopped being able to hold down food, hold down water, anything like that. Um, and it got to the point where it was so bad that I was ready to just end it, because I had been in the emergency room at that point 3 times in 2 weeks, just in such horrible pain, unable to walk. My muscle spasms were so horrible. Uh, Depression, anxiety, all sorts of symptoms. And they just said, we don't. They either said, we don't know what's wrong with you, or there's nothing wrong with you. And that was the biggest thing for me, was the there's nothing wrong with you thing, because obviously there was something wrong with me. And I think over the course of the 15 years, I saw well over 30 specialists, and over half of them told me that it was in my head. And after 15 years of hearing that, you kind of start to believe it. And it got to the point where I was like, all right, well, if I'm crazy and this is what my life is going to be like, I don't think I want to live this life anymore. So I was actually ready to end it, and I had a friend talk me off of the ledge. She was like, please come see me, don't do this. And so I drove to her house in Georgia. I was in South Carolina at the time, and I drove with my pistol in my lap in case I changed my mind, to her place in Georgia. And I ended up staying with her for uh, I think I slept for almost 3 days straight, because I just couldn't function. And when I finally woke up, she said, Tracy, I really think that you need to re-look at whether or not this is chronic Lyme disease, because she has chronic Lyme disease. And she pulled up all the symptoms for me, and I looked at it, and it connected literally all of the dots. And what was kind of crazy about that was that she had brought it up to me 3 years prior, and I brought it up to 4 different doctors, and all of them blew it off. They said, no, that's not what this is. They completely ignored the fact that I not only had a tick bite, but I had a cat bite. And they're both vector borne illnesses that can be brought on by those, or those types of infections are called vector borne illnesses. And there's 32 different types of them. So it isn't just ticks that carry these types of bacteria. It's multiple sources that you can get it from. So anyway, I looked at it, and it was just so shocking. I sent a screenshot of it to my mother, and I'm like, what do you think about this? And she was floored by it. She was like, that really, that connects absolutely everything. And so we instantaneously went into the mode of trying to find a specialist to see if I could get my blood tested, to see if I could get some sort of answer. And at this point, I didn't have any hope with medicine anymore. And so I'm like, I'm just gonna get blown off by another person. It was really, really traumatizing. But I ended up flying back up to Chicago, which is where I grew up, and went with my family to an LLMD is what they're called, which is a Lyme literate medical doctor. And she took more blood than I think I've ever had taken out of my body ever, and sent it off. And within a couple of days, I had a diagnosis, and it I get emotional even thinking about it, because I finally had validation for all of these years of just being told that I was crazy, and it wasn't. I knew I wasn't, and I finally had that validation. So from there, the doctor that I see, I still see her, because I'll be in treatment for many, many years. This isn't something that you can cure overnight, unfortunately, when you've been dealing with it this long, and the trauma that it's had on my body. So, but she started me with functional medicine, because I was completely against conventional medicine at that point because everybody had failed me. Part of the reason my system was as trashed as it was because every time I got tested for anything over the course of those 15 years, they saw some sort of quote unknown infection in my system and they would throw antibiotics at it. They would be like, oh, you must have a kidney infection or you must have a UTI or something like that. So here's, you know, some amoxicillin, here's some Cipro, you know, go away, you know, there you go. You'll be all better. So, you know, constant antibiotics in your system just absolutely destroys your gut. It destroys all sorts of different parts of you. And it was literally making the problem worse. So I was very much against it, of doing any sort of antibiotic therapy or anything like that. And luckily, she is a functional specialist, and so everything that I've taken from day one has been supplements, holistic based therapies. She had to put a PICC line in my arm so that I could get nutritional IVs because I, again, couldn't hold down food. So I was going 3 to 4 times a week for these nutritional IVs, which took 5 to 6 hours, and just kind of suffering through this therapy. But slowly, I started to get a little bit better. But for the first probably 3 or 4 weeks of that, maybe even longer. I think I've probably blocked it out of my memory, to be honest. It's literally like going through chemotherapy. And I know that that's a very strong statement to make, but there's many specialists out there for Lyme disease that say that Lyme is the cancer of infectious diseases because the treatment for it has very similar effects on your system. I was sleeping literally next to the toilet because I was that sick. Wow. And it felt like it never ended. It really felt like it never ended. And I was constantly having to get some sort of reassurance from the people in my life, which was, you know, I moved back in with my parents, and I still live with them now, although the tables have kind of turned with everything. So like we help each other out at this point. But looking for reassurance from them that, am I getting better? Because I did not feel like I was getting better. Just like, you know, we look at ourselves in the mirror every day and we're like, oh, we look the same. But then all of a sudden you see somebody you haven't seen in a month and they're like, oh my God, you look amazing. What have you done different? You know? So it was kind of one of those things. And so, yeah, so that's kind of how my journey got started with all of that. And it lasted for the entire summer. I was in a wheelchair because I could not walk. My muscles were in constant spasm. I needed assistance getting up and down the stairs. I needed help bathing myself. It was really, really, I was knocking at death's door. My doctor told me that if I had waited even 2 or 3 weeks longer, I would have been in full organ failure. I would have died. I was literally dying. And I still have to kind of pinch myself because that part of it doesn't really hit me very, very much. Like, I have to say it out loud in order to understand. I literally almost died. I was dying. So, and now I'm better. But all summer I was in a wheelchair. And then as I started to get my strength back, started being able to eat actual food, I could only eat like 300 or 400 calories without getting really, really ill. She had me on a really specialized diet, which I still follow very, very strictly. If you ask any of my friends or training partners, they'll be like, yeah, Tracy's psychotic about her food. But it's because I know what nutrition can do to make things either amazing or really, 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 really bad for you. So, but yeah, so I don't eat gluten. I don't eat dairy. I don't eat caffeine. I don't eat soy. I don't eat sugar. I don't eat processed foods. I'm not supposed to have alcohol, but I do love wine. So I occasionally do that now. But yeah, so between the diet, getting started on that, and the nutritional IVs, the supplements, I did slowly start to get better. I got my strength back. I was able to move from the wheelchair to the cane, which again is still at 34 years old, you don't want to be walking around with a cane, but I was. That was just the life that I had to live. So I knew, though, that at some point I was going to need to incorporate some type of fitness into my life in order to literally get back on my feet. And I could not walk on a treadmill. I could hold myself up to walk on a treadmill. And this is where pole fitness came in for me, because I couldn't walk on a treadmill, but I could hang onto a pole. So I went ahead and started with that when I was still walking with a cane. So that was in September of last year that I started doing pole fitness. So yeah.
So with Lyme disease, because I don't know much about. I remember in Boy Scouts, that was always the talks. I was in Boy Scouts when I lived in Delaware, and that was always the talk of, watch out for ticks, and if you get bit by a tick, Lyme disease, could be the consequence. And as I've gotten older, you hear from time to time, just the word, but I've never heard any word on, someone gets Lyme disease, is it curable? Or like you said, it's a long road. So is it something that can be cured or reversed in you? Or is it just, it becomes manageable through fitness and nutrition?
Yeah, so I think it really depends on the person. Unfortunately, for my situation, it was kind of like a comedy of errors. Everything that could have gone wrong did from the get go, literally from that first cortisone injection to the antibiotics being thrown at me to being misdiagnosed with all sorts of different, mostly psychiatric disorders, because it's it causes your inflammation in your brain, and that was causing me to have depression and anxiety that I didn't actually have. I had all sorts of fears of things too, which that's kind of an interesting point, I guess, that I could make, is that there's certain things that I was afraid of previously that I'm no longer afraid of. But it all, again, back relating back to like the brain inflammation. But people can be cured from it. It just really depends on the person. And for me, my doctor is hopeful that I will make a full recovery from it, but it's going to take years if that happens. So I'm probably going to be managed on the supplements or the medications that I take for a long time. It ruined my thyroid. My thyroid doesn't work at all, which is part of the reason that I was in the physical condition that I was in. I used to actually weigh 100 pounds more, because even though I was eating properly and I thought I was a pretty active person, it it doesn't matter if your thyroid doesn't work. So
Sure.
that's probably something that's going to need to be managed for the rest of my life. But uh, some of the other symptoms, hopefully they'll go away. Obviously, the muscle spasms are a lot less, to the point where I can, walk. Obviously, not just walk, but fight and pole dance. And so, but yeah, it is something that is curable for people. But if it's caught early, that's that's really the key. And the problem is that not a lot of doctors are willing to learn about it. It is becoming, more mainstream now. It's come out more because this tiny, tiny little bug can really, really ruin your life. And it needs to be talked about more. The CDC numbers are way, way under what they need to be. They're not even close. And a lot of it is politicized too. So to the point where doctors who specialize in treating chronic Lyme disease are ostracized by their colleagues, because their
Really?
colleagues don't want to say that chronic Lyme disease is a thing. And it's because it goes back to states and governments and even whole countries that don't want to admit that this tiny little bug that could be in their state or their country could ruin your life. And so it's really not talked about uh, nearly as much as it should be. And there's doctors that will just outright tell you that chronic Lyme disease does not exist. That is not a thing. There is something else wrong with you. But I don't believe that. I don't believe that at all. So I think that, and based off of, what my doctor has said, it is very treatable, especially if it's caught early on. But even for people who are long-term sufferers of it, like I am, there's hope. There's hope to live a better life. And I'm actually living proof of that at this point because of the condition that I was in last year. I mean, in June of last year, I was literally dying. There's a picture of me with the PICC line in my arm getting that IV. Almost all of my hair had fallen out. I was really sick looking. And then here I am a year later in June winning American Nationals for IBJJF. So
You are living proof that, as your doctors are saying one thing versus another, and none of it's remotely close to right. I mean, it's like all it takes is somebody that actually gives a damn and wants to see you get better. It sucks that it took so long, but I'm glad that it, was figured out. Because I couldn't imagine going through that, and I complained about like, things that have happened to me, and it's like, it's gotten figured out, but nothing to that extent of time, or over that length of time, that it's just wreaked havoc on you. So, again, I'm glad that you are where you are now, and like I said, like, just seeing you on Instagram and seeing you competing, and it's like, wow, like, would have never guessed. It was just like, oh no, she had to have been doing this. Like, even looking at some of the still pictures of you competing, it's like I think you had someone in side control, and one of the things I saw was like you were applying pressure, but you're on your toes. Where you have a white belt, they're usually like in side control and they're on their knees, and I was like,
you can ask my best friend Nicole about that one. She immediately gave me the nickname Pressure after I think I had been training for maybe 3 weeks. She was like, this girl, what? So, and it
one of
stuck.
my
So
one of my coaches used to always say, we would always, look at him because he was a bigger guy, and he'd say, being heavy, having pressure is a skill. And, we all just like, all right, whatever, fat boy. You're just saying that because you like to eat. But, after a few months of training, you realize, like, oh shit, he was right. I mean, he's still fat, but he's right. Not body shaming. I mean, he knows he's a big fella too. But, us were like, wow, like, I don't want to roll with that guy. He's huge. And
use
then,
what you got.
yeah. I mean, play to your strengths, not your weaknesses. And he was really like good technically. His technique was just so good. So when it comes to you getting into jiu-jitsu, what led you there?
So that's a really hilarious story with just the simple statement of, I thought I was signing up for a self-defense class.
You
I
kind of
did.
were.
I did. And actually what led me to jujitsu was Joe Rogan talking about it, and that it was the best form of self-defense, because all last year and for however many years of my life, I was so weak. And I just thought to myself, my God, if somebody wanted to attack me, I would be so screwed. There is no hope. So I had never really thought of martial arts. I mean, I did karate when I was a kid, but we all know that doesn't count. So,
A little.
yeah, I started looking into it. I'm like, all right, let me see if I can find a self-defense class to take. And so I was doing some Googling in the Chicago area, and I found a place that's like, I think 12 minutes from my house, which is BJJ Lab. And it's owned by Mark Thomas Turner, a third degree black belt under Damian Maya. And I thought I was, again, going for a self-defense class. And I show up, and here's Brad, who's the co-owner. And he goes, oh, have you trained before? And I'm like, nope. Sure haven't. What do you mean trained? Like, what is that? Aren't I going to be here with a bunch of other newbies learning how to, I don't know, choke somebody in case they try to hurt me? But nope.
Train? Aren't you
Right?
supposed to be? No, you're supposed to be teaching me. I'm not like, what are you talking about?
Right? Yeah, aren't you just showing me how to do some things? Like, what is this? So they're like, okay, so they gave me my gi and they gave me a belt, and I go into class, and I I had no idea what I was got myself into. I had no idea, and I literally was like, even the warm up, I I still like I get kind of speechless about it because it totally threw me for a loop. I got assigned or picked by my training partner Erica, and I love her so much, and I thank her frequently. I'll thank her again on here. Erica, thank you for keeping me in jujitsu, because I look at her and I said, I feel like I'm hindering your training. I why am I here? What I don't, you guys just threw me to the sharks. And she goes, no, no, no. It helps me to help you. It helps me when I have to explain things, because then I have to think through it too. So again, thank you, Erica, for telling me that, because that's all I needed to hear, was that it was helpful to you. Otherwise, I would have never come back. So, but also, again, I thought it was for self-defense, and it ended up being a sport focused jiu-jitsu academy, and I'm an extremely competitive person, so it just kind of, I was like, okay, well, the first month is free, let me give it a go. But in reality, what happened was I walked right up to the front desk after that, and I said, Brad, here's my credit card, please sign me up. He goes, why don't you try it for a month? Like, no, 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 I'm gonna do this. Like, when I tell myself I'm gonna do something, I do it 100% always. So I signed up, and within 2.5 weeks, I went from going twice a week to every single day. Every class that I possibly could, I was showing up for. And it just kind of went nuts from there, because I went after training for only 3 weeks, I signed up for my first competition. And I joke
Wow.
with all of my training partners about it, because I'm like, all right, what was the pool for this? How long did you guys think I was going to last? And they're kind of like, they're like, a month, maybe. And then it was like, maybe she'll be here for 2. And then, here I am signing up for IBJJF for the Indianapolis competition. And they're like, okay, she's actually serious about this. So, because I'm jujitsu Barbie over here. So it's kind of not I'm very unassuming, and I know that, but I was serious about it, and that was all I wanted to focus on at that point, was training jujitsu. And so I did. I trained as often as I can. I think that I have written down somewhere how many hours I've done, which is absolutely ridiculous at this point. But again, signed up for my first comp at 3 weeks. I did my first competition after training for only 9 weeks, and I got a silver medal. So, and that's when the bug really hit me. So then I signed up for my second competition, which would be in Charleston, South Carolina, which is where my life fell apart, as I like to say. And I went back there and I won a gold medal. So, and that was after I'd only trained for 11 weeks. So,
Sounds like number one, you're a natural. And it sounds like also like you came in expecting one thing and then you put in the work though. You're like, you know what? Yeah, it is, still a self defense class, but not in the way that you thought. Like, you see, what's the movie Enough with Jennifer Lopez?
mhm.
It's like I always, every time I've been seeing that movie poster a lot lately, and I get frustrated because I remember watching that movie and thinking, I don't think you go down to the YWCA, take a couple Krav Maga classes, and then you beat your boy or your husband to death in your home. I don't think that's how that works. You're building a false sense of security there.
Mhm.
But actually going and getting on the mats and training long term and then competing too. Not just hearing that you took to it like a fish to water is really, really awesome. And just again, in my mind, thinking about that, just thinking where you came from
Yeah.
and then where you are.
Not many people know this, but when I started, because again, I don't really talk about it. I feel like when I talk about my illness, unless people are specifically interested asking me questions about it, I'm not looking for sympathy or anything like that. And that's kind of where you go with it. But when I
Yeah.
started, I still had that cane in my car just in case I needed it. And I had a handicap placard just in case I needed it. And that's something that is pretty wild to think about at this point, because if I was capable of doing jujitsu, I really shouldn't have needed those things. But the problem with Lyme disease is that it kind of comes in waves too. And so you'll have really bad days or really bad weeks that even happen in between all of the good ones. And that's what people really don't see, is that they see, I mean, most especially my social media presence, but they don't see what's behind the scenes going on, all that, the days that I really struggle still, or the times on the mat where I literally collapse. And that's only happened twice. And I kind of shook it off and I was like, no, nothing happened. But my friend Kevin was like, did you just fall over? And I'm like, nope, no, I didn't. But I sure did. And it was because I still suffer from bradycardia. So my heart rate can just plummet while I'm working out, or literally whenever. So, and my heart rate was dropping into 30s while I was rolling. And that doesn't
Wow.
out so great. So, but I try to hide that from people because I don't want people to see that I'm sick. And sometimes
Sure.
it's important to remind people that I'm sick because they forget, again, with the social media presence, that I'm a human being and that I have like all of this other stuff going on in my life and that not everything is perfect. It's far from that. There's definitely a lot going on, definitely a lot I still struggle with, but jujitsu has helped me so much with that, because not only does it increase your, cardiovascular fitness, um, it has done something for my brain that I kind of wish I had known what it would become for me, because I would have immediately gone to a neurologist and said, hey, you need to do a study on me because I'm about to start jujitsu and I have all of this brain fog. I can't, I'll be like, move your right arm and my left leg will kick. Like that's how bad it was. And I'm about to train jujitsu, and now here I am, and jujitsu takes over my brain and it becomes muscle memory that I did not have before. And I just really wish that I had some sort of study done or something like that so that it could help other people. But again, I don't like to talk necessarily about how sick I still am with it because of, all of the other things that come along with that. And I just want people to see the strong person that I am. That's all we really ever want, though. So
Even just hearing this is like, you know, you show that you're extremely strong just fighting through. Even, again, you were in some dark places and you came out of it. So that's awesome and just amazing to hear because, you know, it's that weird thing with, even myself, you know, yesterday morning before class, I was like, I do this every time I get ready for class. I'm like, oh man, my legs hurt. I just did kettlebells. This hurts. Or, man, I'm a little hungry. Oh, I just ate something that I probably shouldn't have eaten before training. Look for every excuse in the world to not go. I still go, but it's like there's just things built up in my head for reasons not to go there. Just I'm looking for reasons. Whereas, with you know with anyone that's really fighting something, it's like you have every reason not to go, but you still fight through and you make it. And I think that's the powerful thing to that, where it's like you know it's easy for you just to say, you know what, I can't,
yeah,
but I will. And I think that's pretty awesome.
I think that
Um,
the post that you saw too, that's exactly what I said, was that this is what happened and is happening. And despite that, I still am doing this. That's what I do every day when I get up, every single day. I get up and I say, you're training. It doesn't matter how your body feels. Ignore that. That's all irrelevant, because what's important to you is getting better. And what's helping you do that? Jiu-jitsu. So you're going to go train jiu-jitsu. That's what you're going to do. I don't care if your knees hurt. I don't care if you strained your MCL. I don't care if you broke your finger, which are all things that are wrong right now, but that doesn't matter. so, so if you're not hurt, you're not doing jujitsu right, I guess.
Yeah. If you come out of your class, like if you've been training for X amount of time, and it's like you have nothing that's aching or feels weird, it's like I don't know that you're really doing this right. And I think it sounds weird to say if you're not hurting somewhere or sore somewhere, you're not doing it right. But no, I mean you're getting folded up like a pretzel a lot of times. So
Mm,
it's not how the body works, but we make it work. So you're doing it right.
I'm definitely grateful that I'm a flexible person. I'll just say that. So, but I wake up in the morning and I'm like, is this my Lyme disease or is this jujitsu? I don't know. Who cares?
Yeah,
Go train.
yeah.
So,
It's like you're going out there, so that's what it is. Uh, so when you first went out to compete, what was that experience like for you? Just like leading up to it, because you're still fairly new, and you're just like what was the thought going in? Were you like, I want to test myself, or it was like, oh, what's this? Other people are doing it. Oh, you guys are competing. All right, let's go see what's up with this.
well, here comes Erica again into this story because I'm like, should I be nervous? Because she had signed up for it and she was like, no, just treat it like it's another role at a women's open mat. I'm like, okay. And so that's literally what I do every single time now. So that's what I do every single time. So it's, to me, it's the ultimate test of you against you, because I don't have anybody at the gym that I go to that is a me. I don't. There are no white belt, heavyweight, master one females at my academy. My friend Nicole is the closest to my size. All of the other women are way smaller than I am, and there's not really an opportunity to test myself to see, okay, if I had to go against me, what would I do? Because I'm either training with, girls who are 140, 130 pounds, or I'm training with guys who weigh 200 pounds or 220 pounds, which that's fine because that makes me stronger every time I roll with them. But I really want to test myself against me. And that's what competing has done for me. So, I went to Indianapolis and I won my first match. I lost my second one. But I took home a silver medal and an insane amount of drive to do it again because it was the coolest experience I had had, I think, probably in my life. I can say that it really is. It was absolutely incredible, and it was so incredible for me that I have a hard time understanding why people don't compete, because I understand like risk of injury, things like that, but it's really like if you go in with the mindset of like, especially at white belt, I mean, come on, like especially at white belt, you go in with the mindset of it's just another practice role with somebody who's my size, you're probably not going to get hurt. I mean, you're probably just going to be going against you like with a roll, and as long as you're not, silly about it and you tap if you need to, then you're what are you doing other than missing out on something. So I really am an advocate for people competing, especially for women competing, because it is so hard. I cannot tell you how many times I've wanted to compete and ended up not doing it because there was nobody in my bracket. There would have been nobody to fight against. And to the point where I actually started to get a little nuts about it, and I'll like start reaching out and be like, "Hey, do you got any?" I'll call academies, like local academies for all like all sorts of places, like all over the country. Here I am calling, Austin. I'm like, "Hey, do you got anybody who can move into my, my bracket or something like that? I'm looking to have a match. I've done it overseas too, because I've competed overseas. I competed in London and Barcelona and in Dublin. So I'm making sure that people show up, so that I have somebody to go against. I know that the guys don't have as big of a problem with that. You guys usually have full brackets, but as females, we're lucky to get 1 or 2 matches. So I think more people in general need to compete, and more women especially. Come out, girls. I'm calling you out. Where are my heavyweight 30 plus females at? Come on, let's go.
I think especially with white belts, it's like, there's a saying, it's like nobody's gotten worse by competing. So you went to Indianapolis and competed there, and then Charleston was your next one. Okay, so you said you went to American Nationals.
Yep, that was this year.
How'd that go for you? How like going into that? How did you feel? Like, coming off your previous competitions, and now you're going into American Nationals. This is a big deal.
Well, there was actually multiple competitions that happened before that one. So for me, like, it didn't feel any different until I physically got into the Las Vegas Convention Center, and I was like, oh my goodness gracious, there's a lot of people here. This is the most number of mats that I've seen. Like, it was pretty overwhelming. But I just, I got into my zone. I did my thing. So, and I had a great competitor. Her name's Jessica. Hey, Jess. Jess in the pink gi, because I found out after the fact that she also trains in a pink gi. Of course, I show up in a pink gi to train because I, have blonde hair and eyelash extensions. Why wouldn't I? So that's my thing. So, and apparently it was hers too, but she was a great competitor. And we had a really good match, and that was the toughest match that I had to date. I've definitely had a couple of tougher matches since then, but that was a really good one for me. And it honestly, for me, nationals, it just didn't really feel any different. Everything feels like just another role with just another woman. It's just another open mat to me. I go into that every single time. That's my mindset. And part of having that mindset, it's allowed me to actually, I don't get nerves when I compete, and I can confidently say that. The funniest part about competing for me, and again, my training partners will tell you all about this, but I do not like people watching me compete. That is what makes me nervous, is the fact that there's people watching me compete, and not specifically people in general. Like, people in, I don't care. Like, if there's strangers, there's a crowd, that's not what bothers me. But if it's people I know are there watching me compete, I get nervous about it. And it's hilarious because everybody is like, wait, what? You don't like being watched because of my social media stuff? I'm like, yeah, I don't fucking like it. So to the point where I would literally I would sneak away and compete. I snuck away to Dublin to Barcelona without telling my coaches that I was doing those things so that I could do it alone. So
I think people like really underestimate what, the whole ideal of social media, because with social media, we can present, whatever we want. Just because you're putting it out there doesn't mean that you know, like want to be seen or want attention. It's like, look, this is me sharing this amount with you. You know, take it as it is. That doesn't mean, like you said, I think that's the thing for me with competing is knowing that my team's watching me. Because it's like, it's like, yeah, if it's strangers, like I've gone to other gyms, just visiting, just open that, no problem. Yeah. Had a great time, but the second that you're there and your team's watching, it's like, oh shit.
Yeah. So, and it's actually pretty funny because this weekend is the Chicago Open, And so this is going to be the first competition that I'm doing that literally everybody I know is going to be there. So that should be kind of interesting. I told a couple of my training partners, I was like, look, I wouldn't be mad if you were to make sure that nobody knew what time my match was. I would not be mad. So, but they're gonna show up anyway because I love them and they love me. So, but it'll be. I've slowly been working my way into that with accepting the fact that yes, people are going to be watching me compete, and I'm going to have people coaching me, and I'm going to have friends around, and I'm finally starting to get comfortable with it. I'll get back to you as to how that actually goes down this weekend, but that remains to be seen. But that's literally the only part of competing that gives me nerves, is the thought that somebody I know is going to be watching me. And I had definitely told some people that I was doing nationals, and that was, I think, the first time that I told anybody that I was, I had snuck away to go compete. I told a few people about it. And because of that, I was like, oh crap, people, it's on Flow, like they're all going to be watching me. So, and like my parents are going to be watching me. So, which they did. And that was quite hilarious because apparently, for that match, like my mother expectedly was just crying. Oh my God, this girl's punching you. She's punching you. She's getting hurt. No, Mama, nobody's punching me. Like, so, and that wasn't even nearly as bad, because I think it was the following weekend, maybe 2 weekends later, that I did Austin, and that was the toughest competitor that I have ever had. Was the girl I went against in Austin, because I dropped down to the adult class in order to have a competitor. So that was tough. But I heard from my father that here's my mom now, previously, the week before or 2 weeks before, crying at the TV that I was getting injured. Here she is, fuck her up, T, fuck her up. My mother, my 71-year-old mother, who does not curse, is screaming fuck her up. So, but it's all part of it. I mean, you got to get used to people watching. You got to get used to people being around. You can only sneak around doing it for so long, I think. But keeping it a secret is one thing. But blatantly being like, "Hey guys, I'm going to this," like that is never going to be my jam. I am never going to be like, "Hey everybody, come and watch." That's never going to be a thing for me. You might see me there, but I probably won't have told you that I went. So.
I think that's that's a common thing, in our community. I think, I don't know, because when I think about my teammates, when they go to any competition, it's not really a matter of, it's just the team. We're there. That's it. It's rare that, maybe your spouse, significant other, something, maybe. But yeah, other than MMA fights, I think MMA fights is like, hey, come out, watch me, which I think is probably, I feel like would be more nerve wracking, because you're getting punched, you're getting kicked.
Yeah.
It's like, there's like consequences there, like jiu-jitsu. It's like, we'll just play fighting. It's all right. We're wrestling. Well, we should be fine. But in an MMA fight, someone's trying to shut you off with a punch or a kick.
Yeah.
So.
Don't think that's going to be a thing. I don't think that's ever going to be a thing for me. But hey, never say never, I guess, or whatever. Yeah.
So. True. I mean, like you said, a year ago, you would have thought. But
who would have thought? Yeah. I mean, I've had a couple of my coaches say, "Oh, once you're a blue belt, we'll get you doing super fights." And I was like, "What's a super fight?" And they're like, "Oh, there's like posters, and then they sell tickets and shit." And I'm like, no, I don't ever see myself doing that, just because of the attention thing, which again is the opposite of what people would think, but that's not my jam. So I don't know if it ever will be. I'm an introvert, believe it or not. Nope, I don't like people watching me. So no, I don't think I'm going to sell tickets, but you never know. So, and that's peer pressure. I might.
Never say never. You might change your mind.
I mean,
something
I
might come
feel
about.
pressure pretty frequently, so I'm pretty sure that'll probably happen one day. So
Well, if and when that day comes, I'm cheering you on and like posting the story. Hey, that's my friend. My friend's competing. Like she said she wasn't gonna do it, and now she's doing it. Like
oh, it'd have to be some high roller shit for me, probably. So,
it's it's all it. Look, that counts. That counts.
hmm.
Like that goes in that pocket of like, well, never say never. Whoa, wait a minute. We got something for you. This might work.
Like, okay, fine.
So with all that, I guess with your training, because you train, as much as you can practically every day, right?
Yeah, so I train sometimes over 20 hours a week. So it's a lot. It's multiple times a
Oof.
day. Yeah, I'm up with the 6 a.m.ers and I'm there with the evening classers and then everything in between that I can possibly fit in. So it's a lot. Yeah, yeah.
Well,
And usually 7 days a week. So
like besides jiu-jitsu, do you do like any other fitness? Well, I guess the pole fitness is one thing, but like, do you do anything like any weights or any like yoga or things like that?
yeah, so I actually do aerial arts. It's not just pole. So I've done lyra, I've done silks, I do aerial
Oh, okay.
sling, and I do aerial yoga. I do regular yoga too. When I got to London and I was 6 pounds overweight from water weight, I went to hot yoga wearing three different sweatsuits. And but yeah, yeah. So yoga is definitely part of my life. It has to be. I do a lot of people look at how much I'm training and they're basically like, how are you physically doing this? And I know that it's a little bit different for me because I am self-employed and I make my own schedule and I have the time to do it. So in between training, everything I'm doing is involved with recovery. I do a lot of physical therapy. I see sports medicine practitioners. I'm doing yoga. I'm stretching. I am ice bathing. I am literally doing all of the things because this is what I do full time. So you have to be able to recover. And I know people look at it and they're like, there's no way that you could be recovering from that. Well, I am. I mean, do I have minor injuries right now? Yeah, but I mean, hopefully, knock on wood, nothing major happens because they'll probably, throw me completely off kilter. But it's yeah, I'm doing the recovery stuff. I am doing yoga. So for other fitness type activities, I did competitive figure skating when I was younger, and I had actually picked that back up earlier in the year. I was training to do that. I also enjoy archery. I bow hunt, so I shoot a hoyt. So I do a lot of different things. I've volunteered before for uh, horseback riding, specifically equestrian that focuses on wounded vets. Because I have a lot of friends who are either active duty or former military, and they all hold a very special place in my heart because of what they do and what they've been through. So I try to do volunteer work for that. So I teach horseback riding, doing two vets for therapy purposes. Um, let's see. I mean, my gosh, I do all sorts of things. I like falconry. I know that that's like such a random thing, but I am a member of the Great Lakes Falconers Association.
Wow.
So yeah, I attend their meetings and stuff. So it's all sorts of stuff. I'm not ADD. I'm ADC, ABCDFG. So it's bad.
Well, I mean, it's like you're active, you've got something going on, there's so many people that I don't want to say don't do enough because that sounds horrible, but there's so many people that, you know, like I'll take my daughter for instance. She's got all the toys in the world, and she's like, oh, I'm bored. There's so many people. It's like there's so much available to do, so many people claim to be bored or have nothing to do, and it's like, so hearing you have, all these activities is like, hey, you're taking advantage of, your opportunities, and you're getting out there. So that's fucking awesome, dude.
It and a lot of it comes from, obviously, what I went through with the Lyme disease and what I am still going through with it. It had become a coping mechanism for me because, again, all of the doctors, or not all of them, but most of the doctors are telling me this is in your head. And so it became a coping mechanism for me to be like, okay, well, if I'm crazy and this is all just in my head, then I just need to push harder. I just need to push through it. I just need to do more. I need to work harder and all of that. So, whether or not at this point it's a healthy or unhealthy coping mechanism, I'm not quite sure, but that it seems like it's become a healthy one because I have so much drive to make up for lost time. You don't know. You really don't know that tomorrow exists for you. You don't know if the next hour exists for you. And sometimes for people, it's really hard to explain that to them because it literally took me almost dying to have my eyes opened up that wide, to be like, no, I'm not waiting until tomorrow. No, I'm not going to hold off on doing this, that, or the other. Yeah, I'm going to go compete. Yeah, if I want to pick up a falcon and go hunting with it, I'm going to go do that. Yeah, if I want to, eat that, whatever the heck it is, off of a tree. Like, I'm literally going to go do what I want when I want to do it, because if you don't take advantage of those opportunities, you might not get a chance to do it. There are not many people out there who truly get a second chance at life. And I got that. I was blessed with that for some reason. And I'm here for some sort of reason, and I wholeheartedly believe that. And if that's to motivate people, to let them know that it doesn't really matter what you have going on in your life. Obviously, life can, quote, get in the way of things sometimes, but you should. If you want to try something, go try it. If you want to do something new, do it. If you want to learn something, pick it up. Just go for it. You have to go for it, because I promise you don't, not everybody gets a second chance. I was 2 weeks away from not having a second chance. And I am going to absolutely, for all of eternity until my last breath, going to continue with that mindset of, if I want to do it, I'm going to go do it. There's literally nobody who's going to stop me. If it seems like a Tracy's doing a bunch of crazy shit, it's because I am, and it's because I wanted to do it. Am I going skydiving? Absolutely. Absolutely. I used to be scared of heights. I'm not nearly as scared of heights anymore, but we're going to find out. So I'm going to go do these things. So, because you don't always get it tomorrow. So.
Well said. I mean, definitely can't argue with that. And because of that, now you've lit a fire under my ass. So
Get out and do it.
now I'm like, oh shit, now I gotta go talk to my coach. Now I gotta figure out when can I compete next. Ah, fuck.
See, those are all
But I
hangups,
mean,
though. Those are all hangups. Don't let that stuff get you hung up. Don't get in your own head about it too much. Just be like, no, I want to go do a thing. I'm going to go do it. And then go do it. I believe in you.
well, thank you. Well, Tracy, this has been an amazing conversation. So thank you for doing this.
Absolutely.
We were talking beforehand, and you're saying you're nervous, and I was like, I'm always nervous before I do these things. It's just, 120. This will be one episode 120, and I'm always just nervous myself personally. But you know, from my angle of it, talking with you, you made it very, very, um, very relaxing. I'm the host. I'm supposed to make you relax, but you made me actually feel very like just like cool and collected, and just like, oh, there's nothing to be nervous about. And I was telling you like, nah, about 10 minutes and you'll be fine. Like you won't be nervous at all. So, but thank you for sharing your time with me and sharing your story. Definitely would love to have you back on if you have time in your busy, crazy schedule to do
When
so.
100%. 100%. Absolutely. Yeah, for sure.
Awesome.
You can
Awesome.
talk about some of the crazy shit I've done since then. So
I'm sure they'll stack up.
very
And
quickly.
I'm here for it. So I definitely want to know. Before we
Mhm.
get out of here, do you have any shout outs or mentions that you'd like to throw out?
Yeah, so I definitely have a main one, and that's gonna go out to Mark Turner, who's the owner of BJJ Lab in Naperville, where I mainly train. He's an incredible person, and obviously the reason that jujitsu was brought into my life, and I'll forever be thankful for that. He does a lot of work outside of just jujitsu, and I definitely wanted to give a little plug here for it. But he is in the process right now of raising money for his fifth trip over to help people in the Ukraine. And he has a nonprofit organization, or it's pending their nonprofit status, but they're working towards that, called the Overwatch Foundation. You guys can find it at overwatchfoundationusa.org, and they're trying to raise money to put together medical supplies, and help train some of these people over in Ukraine for everything that they're dealing with right now. So that's one of his main focuses. So I really feel like I need to, put that out there for everybody. Please go visit the website. Please check out what they are doing. Share it if you can, and donate if you can. If you can't, that's cool. Just share, get the word out there, because what they're doing is very important work. So
Absolutely. And I'll be sure to put that in the show notes and also tag on um, Instagram as well, where I do most of my promoting. Um, so, and as usual with everyone out there, thank you for listening. And thank you for all the support over the last couple years. Like I've said, the last couple episodes, this is 2 years, y'all, and I'm excited. So thank you for everyone that's been supporting the podcast and listening. I love you guys. If y'all have any questions, concerns, feel free to reach out to me. You can find me at bjj.wiki on Instagram or Off the Mats Podcast on Instagram as well. I'm all over Instagram. So you like horror, Colompton Beer Club, whatever. I got too many Instagram accounts, so go find me on all of them. I love to do a big shout out here to our good friends over there at Asgard 503. Good friend Mike, who was my guest last week, and you know, just talk with that dude was a treat. So I always feel like I have to shout this guy out. He's a hard worker, and just such a good dude. Go check out his social media. Go check out the website, asgard503.com. Grab yourself a gi, grab yourself a rash guard, some shorts. He's got you covered. Also, big shout out to my friends over there at Nerd Rage Radio, Bobby, Joe, and Chris. I love that Bobby, Chris, and Joe. I don't want to make it sound like his name is Bobby Joe. They're three separate people: Bobby, Joe, and Chris. All three people. I want that to sound like Bobby Joe is one person. But go check those guys out. Nerd Rage Radio. That's where I got my start with podcasting. So I owe a lot to those gentlemen over there. Go check them out on Instagram, Nerd Rage Radio IG, or go just listen to the podcast. It's everywhere you can find podcasts, including this one. And the last shout out is to my other podcast, So You Like Horror. Go check it out. We talk about horror movies, we talk about scary stuff. If that's what you're into, go listen. We're not professionals, but we like to have a lot of fun. So go check it out. Otherwise, as always, thank you so much, everyone. I love you all to death. You guys keep listening. I'm going to keep making the show. So thank you, everyone, again. And ciao.
Deep with it. Now let me sing a song.